Okay, so we have made it through the whole course. Congratulations. It was not easy. Just a few kind of words to sum everything up. Don't worry, there's no assignments or quizzes or anything. So, first of all, remember that we divided the course into 4 parts. Metaphysics, epistemology, I should put the E there, ethics, and politics. And these are 4 of the most important aspects of philosophy branches. And metaphysics, remember, asked what is. And remember, we looked at different perspectives, right? We looked at idealism and we looked at materialism. And notice we looked at 2 completely opposite things. Epistemology. Episteme is Greek for knowledge. We looked at what is true, right? And then if you recall, well, if we're going to talk about true versus false, we have to have a basis for how we can distinguish truth from falsity, right? And that basis has to be from what exists in the first place, right? So these 2 questions are very related. You can't say that something is true unless it is. Likewise, you can't say something is false unless it is not. In ethics, we looked at what is truly good. Now I qualify good with truly because there are many different goods. Heroin feels good, right? There's all kinds of goods, but we're after the ones that are truly good. So in order to know what is truly good, we've got to be able to know what is true, right? And in order to know what's true, we have to know what is. And so lastly, once we know what's truly good, because we all live in communities, we need to know what is truly good for the whole, right? And that's the whole point of politics. And so there are very different ways of looking at what's truly good for the whole, right? We looked at monarchy, we looked at aristocracy, we looked at republic. Those are the 3 basic forms of government. In ethics, we looked at teleology, we looked at religious ethics with Spinoza, and we looked at Aristotelian ethics and virtue. In terms of knowledge, we looked at rationalism and we looked at empiricism. In terms of metaphysics, we looked at idealism and we looked at materialism. So what's the point of all this? Well, at the very beginning, if you recall, we looked at critical thinking. And this was our introduction. And if you remember, we looked at the movie Gladiator, and we looked at the notion of the mob. And there's a difference between a citizenry and a mob. And that's sort of the whole reason for this course. That's the whole reason for philosophy. In metaphysics, we looked at 2 things. In epistemology, we looked at 2 things. In ethics, we looked at 3 things. In politics, we looked at 3 things. And there's all kinds of things in between that we didn't look at. And so at the end of it, you might be saying, what was that? We looked at all of these different contradicting viewpoints, none of which could be considered absolute. And that's exactly the case. And part of the reason that we wanted to look at that was because there is no absolute. There is nothing that is absolutely true. Notice even when we were looking at Spinoza, right? We had to look at, if you want to say, well, Spinoza's will of God tells me what's absolutely true. Well, how do you know the will of God, right? Or if we're looking at nature with the Stoics, how do you know what nature is, right? There's always an argument. There's always a reason to be critical. And a citizenry must always be critical in their thinking and their evaluation. It's only critical thinking that will allow us to remain a citizenry rather than a mob. The mob is given to entertainment. and the mob is given to emotion. And as long as we go down this road, then we will no longer be able to be critical thinkers, and we will turn from citizens into a mob. And who rules a mob? The tyrant. So, how did this course prepare us for critical thinking? Notice that you struggled through very difficult readings, right? And we read basically arguments. And these arguments were very complex, very detailed, and a lot of people at first commented that, oh my God, these guys are talking in circles, they contradict themselves. Hopefully by the end of it, you realized, in fact, that they didn't contradict themselves. It's just that critical thinking takes a tremendous amount of reason, and reason takes a tremendous amount of discipline, right? And so if we think about the tripartite soul in all of this, right? Reason, emotion, appetite. The only way to be a critical thinker is to lessen the effects of emotions and appetites, right? So when we're more rational, we can have the discipline to think with reason, hence be critical, and hence be good citizens. And so the arguments that we read, in terms of any doctrines, notice we looked at opposite doctrines, right? And so for each of our 4 areas, we had different perspectives. That wasn't meant to confuse you or to give you a sense of relativity. It was meant so that you can understand the other. That is, so that you get in the habit of understanding a completely different perspective, right? That's the whole point. Because when you understand different perspectives, you can think rationally because you have other tools in your mind to think about. And so we can be critical, and so we can be a citizen body. If we don't have the ability to think critically, so remember those CEs that I had you guys write, right? So here's how the whole course went. First, you did the reading. Then we had an RQ. The RQs were simply to check your ability to read. Then you did an SP. And the SP simply made you summarize the reading. So by the time you do the RQ and the summary, you're ready to do a CE, concluding essay. And it's the CE where I asked you to evaluate and choose, right? And so in choosing, that's where you had to deliberate. You had to consider the perspectives of the other, right? Because most of the stuff I'm assuming that you're not familiar with. So you have to know several doctrines so that you can then make your own argument for a reasoned account and a critical account of a given idea. And that's the whole point. And the whole point of that is, at the end of the day, so election time is coming up. And if we are all emotional and we want to be entertained by excitement and punching politicians and all that kind of stuff, then we're not going to be able to choose, because we will be addicted to our emotions and appetites right here, and we won't make choices. So in being able to evaluate the various doctrines and perspectives that we looked at in the course, you're practicing basically how to be a citizen in a free republic. That is, how to make a rational choice, how to disengage our habits of entertainment and emotion so that we do not become a mob, so that we can in fact be critically minded citizens, so that at the end of the day we can maintain a free republic. Because remember, if you will, republic means the affairs of the people. Okay, so who cares about the people? That's just it. The irony is the people does not really exist on a physical level, does it? We almost have to have an abstract idealism to even think about what's good for the people as a whole instead of myself. And that's the whole point of a republic. And critical thinking is about understanding things higher than ourselves, because entertainment and emotion is all about me. And tyrants understand that. Anyway, so at the end of the day, that's kind of one of the things I was hoping that you'd get out of this course. Not any particular perspective. You'll probably end up forgetting them anyways. If you forgot, what Plato said in the Republic, that's fine. But if you went through the process of taking something very difficult and complex and broke it down until you understood it so that you could actually make a rational choice, that's the whole point of this course. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you continue to think philosophically.